Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming along. I have to say that. This presentation is on an issue that arose in Perth, and it's an issue that is fairly common across, at least across Australia. It's to do with the transition to mainstream schooling of young people from refugee backgrounds from mainly the Horn of Africa, the north of Africa. You've probably seen in newspapers, if you're from Australia, I suppose, but other parts of the world as well, that there are significant issues with these young people coming into school. And the question arose, what's actually happening? Why are they all of a sudden becoming newsworthy? So, which button? Nope. Oh, darn, sorry. Yeah, okay. Now, the information that we have that was provided by the Bureau of Statistics suggests that 40% of the young refugee children who come into Australia have significant issues in critical parts of their lives. For example, many of them have been through trauma. Many of them have been through, there's been a significant lack of schooling. Very few of them actually speak English, or their English is very, very, very limited. And that last little bit there from the Bureau of Statistics, 23% are 10 to 24 years of age. So there's a very young population. No, I'm having trouble again. Thank you. These people, young people, are coming into these schools. Oh, this one. Oh, there. Okay. Sorry about that. It's not like my computer at work. And a lot of these young people, when they're transitioning into the mainstream school, are causing significant concerns behaviourally. And there's also other aspects as well. There's their learning issues, huge learning issues, behaviour issues, and social issues. All young people who come into the schools in Australia have to attend what we call an intensive English centre for 2 years. This is where there's significant input on learning English, plus other aspects associated with their education, associated with schooling. So they're not just learning English, but they're learning reading, writing, and arithmeticing. And it's intensive. They're there for 2 years. Unfortunately, and it's a very big unfortunately, the instant their 2 years is up, just like that, they're exited into mainstream schools. Now, while they're in the IECs, the Intensive English Centres, they are looked after. They are, I suppose to use a term which might not be common to all, mollycoddled. They're in cotton wool. They're really, really looked after. They tend to be isolated from the regular school. So they have all their contact is with other people within the centre. Now, these centres are actually in the campus or on the campus of regular schools. But there's very little interaction between the regular students and the IEC students. The second point here, when we were looking at the difference between inside the centre versus outside the centre, there's a significant priority on education. They know, they see that education will get them what they want. Their understanding of education is a little bit different to a regular students. They see school giving them the skills. They go to school and teachers will teach them what they need to know. And it's almost as if they divorce themselves from learning. We know perfectly well that we have to have an input, a significant input to learning. Whereas the perception seems to have been, I go to school, when I leave school, I will know everything I need to know. Unfortunately, that's not always true. Now, when they transit to mainstream, this is when they start to have significant issues, significant problems. They've got very few strategies for conflict resolution, whether it's a social conflict problem or other types of conflict. Very few. They've been in this situation, very little development of being able to interact with the regular mainstream school students. But, excuse me, there has been some anecdotal small-scale interviews, studies. And so, for example, some of the studies that have been carried out tending to show that there's a serious conflict. Sorry, I'm just a bit worried about that going into the plugs. I don't want to get electrocuted. There's the issue with the country of origin expectations of these young people versus the new expectations placed on them in their new environment. They need to identify with their origin. They need to try and assimilate into the new way people work and carry on. So, some of the outcomes is aggression in the classroom, aggression in the playground. There's a greater risk of adverse outcomes such as drug taking, getting involved in delinquent behaviours, etc. And the study, I'm going to hand over to Steve in a couple of minutes. He'll go through the data looking at some of the behaviours that they engaged in. But what we've seen is that, and it says here, 63% with more than 2 years of interrupted schooling, 90% with no prior schooling failed to complete year 12 in Australia. And that's significant. That's huge numbers. And they have dreams when they're in the IEC. They want to be doctors, they want to be nurses, they want to be aeroplane pilots, etc. Then they hit reality when they exited into the regular school. And their dreams are shattered. So what are they left with? We have the media sort of reporting on these young people, and some of the reports are absolutely shocking. I'm not going to read through these, but I'll just put them on screen. From 12 years of age, this is reported in the media. These young people are becoming extremely violent, they are becoming delinquent in their behaviours. This is crime wave in Victoria, gangs of these young people contributing to surge in criminal behaviour. The one just down here, I mean, they're actually going out of their way to be aggressive. They're going out of their way to be violent and scary, I suppose. And these young people rampaging through a party in a park, people at a barbecue with their children, etc. And then finally, parents, young Sudanese children being sent back to South Africa or to Africa to do their schooling because people are saying it's too dangerous in Australia. I mean, goodness sake. It must be serious problems with these young people. Excuse me if that's happening. I'll hand over to...